Okay.
Thanks,
Marco. Today our speaker is Brian, and he will share his experience, strength, and hope with us.
Hey guys, I'm Brian. I'm a heroin addict.
Hey, Brian.
I have a sobriety date. It's April 24th, 2012. I have a home group. It's the No Choice group. We meet here today, right now, and yesterday at the same location at 7 p.m. I have service commitments at that meeting. I have service commitments at the HA area, district level, and I have a service commitment for the HA World Service Delegate. I have a sponsor. His name is Eric. Eric and I work steps out of the big book Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm very blessed to sponsor others and work the steps with them. As a result of these things, I've had an experience with a power greater than myself that's freed me from the mental obsession to do heroin and all other mind-altering substance, and I'm very, very grateful for that. That's it, right? I used to think I don't know what I used to think about sobriety, but it has absolutely nothing what it actually looks like. But when I first came to these rooms, I didn't think what people said kept them sober had anything to do with if they were really sober, which I didn't believe the majority of them were really sober. I thought it just meant they smoked weed on the weekends. I just thought that there was secrets, and they tell me, I was miserable, and I was homeless, and I was dying, and they were all right, we'll get a sponsor, and I was that won't work for me, and I was I might, there could be legal problems back home, and they're all right, well, get a home group, and I was that wouldn't work for me. And I was my mom, every time I talk to her, she just starts hysterically crying from everything I put her through. And they're give back to this program. And I was yeah, that won't work for me. And, it turns out they didn't work for me as long as I didn't do anything. I didn't engage in any of those processes. But the second I started engaging those processes, my life began to change. And there was no secret. It was said every meeting I ever went to, what the solution to this problem is. It's really that easy. Everything I'm going to share after that is just my opinion on what's going on here, and my experience with it. But that's it. Right. So the other thing, I loved heroin. I still love heroin. Heroin did for me, what nothing else could do for me. My idea of a good time was take a bunch of Xanax, maybe some sleeping pills, put meth and heroin in a rig, get high. Sometimes it would be in my closet. Sometimes it would be in my filthy, filthy room, and I wouldn't leave it for days. And I thought that was the best idea in the world. I really liked getting weird with heroin and with speed. After 3 or 4 days of not sleeping, I like to talk to shadow people. I remember one time my old secretary was Brian, I knew something was wrong when you sent me a text at 3 o'clock in the morning talking to me about squirrel armies. So that's what I like to do. I like to just get weird with it, That being said, I suffer from the disease of alcoholism. And it's very, very important for me to understand that because, right, if I don't know what my problem is, I have no chance of solving said problem. If I don't recognize the problem, I'm not going to do anything about the problem. And the problem is called alcoholism. It's laid out in this book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and it breaks it up into 2 parts. It says the first part is, I react differently from other people when I put drugs and alcohol in my body. I have a sister who can go to a bar and drink 1.5 beers, and that shit pisses me off, I had that intention many, many times in my life to only smoke a joint, to just do a gram of cocaine tonight, to go to the bar and have a few beers with dinner and then go about my life, And before I went and did any of those one things, if you put me on a lie detector test and said, are you going to have 2 drinks tonight? Are you going to have 1 bag of dope tonight? Are you going to have just a hit of weed? I would have passed when I told you that was my only intention and that's all I planned to do. But the problem is when I have that one, all bets are off now, you know. Whatever happens makes me bodily, mentally different from my fellows becomes the most important thing in my life. It's paramount over all other things. So like I might want to be a son. I might want to be a brother. I might want to show up to work the next day. But when I put that one in, all those bets are off. I'm now a spectator to my life. It's running it. Right. And if that was the only problem, it's not that big of a problem. You know, people have allergies all the time. And the reaction to that is just don't eat it anymore. Don't put it in my body. My face doesn't swell up. I don't lose my breath. I just never do it again. But the real cunning, baffling part of my problem is perfectly sober, knowing that every time I do this, you know, I could end up in jail. Knowing that every time I do this, my mom's probably going to kick me out. Knowing that every time I do this, I won't have a paycheck, that I probably will lose my job. You know, my brain becomes so twisted, restless, irritable, and discontented that I think, you know what? I think I got this figured out this time. And I'm going to try it this way, and all that stuff's not going to happen this time. Or I know it's going to happen, but I just don't care because I'm so miserable in this moment that I have to get out. So if that's the only thing that's going to get me out, I have to do it. And then I have that first one again, and then all that stuff goes in motion. And that second part is what this, you know, like, so I'm an alcoholic because it tells me what that is in this book. But more importantly, after it lays out the problem to that, lays out the problem, it gives me a course of action I can take which solves that problem. And that's the most important thing in my life today. Right, so my story, I really appreciate that this book tells me how to share. I really appreciate that it tells me that I can share in a general way what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I do not need to go over the minutia of who I got high with, where I got high, all what it felt like. You know, like, right, if we're sitting in this room, we probably have a good idea how to get high, where to get high, you know, like what high looks like. So I assume you guys do. For me, the main important thing that happened in my life, not the main important thing, one important thing that happened in my life is like from a very young age, my dad was an alcoholic. My dad is an alcoholic, and he left really early, you know, didn't leave us with anything. He just left. And, you know, even before then, though, like, there was something wrong, you know, like, there was something wrong. Always, like, as long as I can remember, there was something wrong. Right? I don't know what it was, but when he left, I became very afraid. I became very afraid that my other parent wasn't going to come home. And that just like one fear really just like got into every aspect of my life and really started corroding everything, you know. Why that's really important to me is, right, I was broken before drugs and alcohol came in the mix, you know. There was something wrong. I was restless, irritable, discontented before I ever had my first drink. So it's really, really important for me to realize that and understand that, because the drinking, the drugging, the heroin, that wasn't the problem. There was a problem beforehand, and all that did was treat the problem, right? So I can't wait until I want to drink, till I want to shoot dope, before I have to do something about the problem. I have to do something, you know, when I became afraid, when I become jealous, when I became just restless, irritable, discontented. You know, I got to do something about that before the only option I have is to get high, right? I got to go to meetings. I got to help others. I got to talk to a sponsor. If I don't do these things, I know what's going to happen. I've lived it. So the next important thing, I had my first drink at 12. I drank that night till I puked. I definitely think whatever makes me bodily, mentally different from my fellows happened that very night. Right? I guess the best way to explain it is, right, like something was broken the whole time, and I really didn't know what it was. I didn't fit in. I didn't feel comfortable. And, like, when I got that first drunk, like, for the first time in my life, I could just, like, breathe, you know? Like, I felt like I was suffocating for 6-7 years prior, and when I had that first drink, I could breathe. I could be a human being. I could just live like you guys live. Right. And, following that for the next 22 years, I did that. I sought, right? I don't even know if I sought it. I was drawn to that feeling over and over and over again. Sometimes it would punch me in the face. Sometimes it would make me wake up on a bathroom floor puking. Sometimes it would make me get found by police in a park doing snow angels in the middle of freaking August on 25 hits of acid. I was just drawn to it, and no matter the circumstances, the consequences of that, I did it again because I had to breathe, right? And, I just did that for a very long time, and that was how I lived, The next thing I really learned for a coping mechanism was, right, if I'm living my life like that, consequences are sure to come. If I have to do that. And when they did, what I learned was, I'm just going to, let this happen for a little bit. And when I burn everything to the ground, when I destroy my life and those around me, I'm just going to run, And I did that a lot. I ran first out of here to college, and when that didn't work out, I went to another college, and when that didn't work out, I went to another college and 6 more colleges after that. And then when that, I could honestly say, there was no point in my life that I ever wanted to stop drinking or getting high. I definitely wanted to find some kind of control over that. No idea that this wasn't going to be in the cards for me. So, I just tried to, change a whole bunch of things to get that control. And, so I ran. And I ran and I ran. I ran to Florida. I ran to Arizona. I ran back to my mom's house. I ran back to Florida, to Buffalo. I just did that. And if I was good at it, when I burnt everything to the ground, I could maybe travel with a hostage. I was big at moving in with a girl or making a girl move down here, and then when that didn't work out, I would try to get a better job or a different car or a better apartment. Right, and just none of it worked, And I just tried to, do those kind of things for, a really long time, really long time. And, the next really important thing that happened, I was 28, 29 years old. I was a pretty good alcoholic, pretty good Xanax addiction, and I was also trying to be, a UFC fighter. I had, dreams of being Chuck Liddell. It's really hard to do that when you're drinking on a nightly basis and taking Xanax every 5 seconds. So really what was happening was I was getting injured a lot. And I remember I dislocated my elbow, and the doctor gave me Vicodin. And, he probably first gave me a shot of Dilaudid and then Vicodin. And I knew at that moment that, all right, I'm not going to be Chuck Liddell, but, here we go. This Vicodin thing is where it's at. This is what I've been looking for. Right, and that goes how that goes. Vicodin turns into Percocets, and Percocets turns into Roxy's, and Roxy's turned into Opanas. And there's that one drug that I'm never going to do, I loved train spotting, when I was a kid. I knew that heroin wasn't, a good deal. I saw that dude, die of AIDS with his cat in his apartment. I saw the guy, getting sick. I had a couple of friends that at this point in my life, had already sold to heroin, and it didn't look like it was a really good thing, and I also knew I'd freaking love it, and I would sign up for all that garbage too, and right, I was never gonna do it, and I meant it, I really did. I was, I had no desire to do heroin, and one day the Roxys were 2 hours away. They were really expensive. I met a girl on a dating website, and we were lying to each other about how we use drugs. And she's like, you know what? I'm just going to go get heroin today. And I was like, that sounds like a fabulous idea. Let's do that. But it was a lot closer. And we went to Schenectady. I got my first bundle. And, I'm definitely never going to do heroin, but I'm absolutely never going to shoot heroin. I don't like needles. I have trouble if somebody else is doing it. It's just not going to, just physically impossible for me to shoot myself up. And I meant it. and I snorted 2 bags of dope on my first bundle, and I didn't even get well. I had a pretty gnarly Roxy addiction, and the heroin didn't work. And like, right today, sane, I look at that as like, why wasn't that like this huge glowing stop sign being like, stop, you did the end all be all on drugs and you didn't even get high. You didn't even get well, But it was not a stop sign. What happened was I snorted 2 bags. I didn't get high, and I called the girl up and I said, well, I guess you have to come over and shoot me up. I'll pay you $10. And she did, Yeah. I don't know. Up until this point in my life, I'd seen a lot of things. I've been a lot of places. I've experienced a lot of things. And I can't tell you a lot about any of those things, but I can definitely tell you about the first time I shot dope. I was in a brown Jeep. I was wearing a yellow polo shirt. It was a crisp autumn day. She shot me up, and I looked at her, and I was like, this is going to kill me. And I had like a smile on my face, and it was what I was looking for my entire life. For the first time in a very long time, it drowned out everything for, an hour or so. It was just where I wanted to be. And, right, after that does what that does every time. Heroin takes over and I start doing all those things that I never want to do. It just wasn't going very well, constantly being sick, constantly doing horrible things, lying to myself on a daily basis. After a while, I just couldn't do it anymore. I'd woken up one too many times in, a McDonald's bathroom with a needle in my arm, and I fucked over one too many people. I couldn't keep the lie going to my mother any longer, I just couldn't do it. And, I got to a point where, I always thought suicide was, the most selfish thing anyone could do. And I really believed that. But I'd become such a just horrible junkie that, I really came to terms with the idea that, if I kill myself, everyone's going to be better off. I truly believed that, if they didn't have to, pay for me and deal with me, they would just be better off. And that was, the last lie I told myself, and I took action on that. I went face first into a glass table. I took a lot of pills and I shot dope, and I fell out. And I went through a glass table. I hit my computer and it fell back on top of me, and I laid there dying, bleeding, with my legs crumbled up underneath me for the next 4 or 5 hours. And that's how my mom got to find her youngest son. Blue and dying. She called the paramedics. They came. She later told me that, she followed the ambulance to the hospital because she thought she was identifying a body. She didn't think I was going to make it. It didn't look good on my way out. But I came to, and for a second in the hospital. And I don't know. I was there for a really long time afterwards. And, when I finally, started putting things together and, what happened, my family started intervening on me. I don't know. They wanted to send me to a rehab in California, and it didn't sound like a groovy idea. I just wanted to get out of that hospital and do it one more time. But my sister told me that they took my phone. They were looking at who I was texting. They took all the drugs in my house. And, when I realized that, I called a dude that I used to get stuff from, and I was like, hey, man, I fell out. The cops got my phone and my stuff. And he was like, Brian, as I told the police officers, I did not sell you heroin or Suboxone. And they, hung up on me. And that just, made me realize, I needed to go to rehab. I didn't want to go to rehab. I didn't intend to, change my life, but I agreed to go. And, I got to rehab. And, I wasn't going to change my life. I wasn't buying what they were selling. And really all they were selling for a really expensive price was this book that cost $10.25. They sold it to me for $30,000. Who knew? And they brought me to meetings, and they told me to get a sponsor. And it didn't sound like I'm not gonna call some guy and like talk about my feelings and read a book. Like that's not gonna work. And I did that for like 4 months. Like, well, I didn't do that. I did nothing for 4 months, and I just became really miserable and just shitty. The only thoughts and words that ever came out of my mouth were like suicide and heroin. So I didn't have a lot of friends, and I just got back to that suicide idea. I finally realized that like no matter like if I needed to or I wanted to stay sober, like I couldn't do that either. So like this wasn't a good life. And I was going to take action on that again. But for whatever reason, I like went in my pocket and I came out with this number and it said Doug Pete. And my counselor had given it to me. He said, call this guy. He's going to be your sponsor. And I don't know why I kept it, because when he told me I wanted to throw it away, but I kept the number. And when I saw that, I just had like a moment of clarity. Like if all these things and all these people and all these events had come together to like give me this chance, the very least I could do is work these steps. And if they didn't work, I could go back to getting high. But if they did, like that might be cool. And I called the guy Doug and I said, I have no idea how to stay sober. Could you show me how to do that? And I then told him I was thinking about suicide and getting high. And as a good member of this program, he came over with this book and we started working steps that day. And so he asked me like some really important questions that I didn't fully understand, but he said, Brian, are you willing to go to any lengths to stay sober? I said yes, to shut him up. And he said, do you know what you just said yes to? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't do heroin. And he was like, no. He's like, there's these meetings, and at these meetings there's a guy like Mike here with the binder. You're going to go up to him and you're going to say, I want a commitment. And you're going to do that commitment no matter what. And he's like, do you know what no matter what means? And I'm sure I said something. It was probably wrong. And he explained to me that no matter what meant like no matter what. Like just like I treated the heroin dealer. I was there 15 minutes early. I called everyone I knew to throw in on it. Like I was there every week no matter what. And I did that commitment no matter what. Like if my foot hurt, if I had a headache, if there was a girl that wanted to go out, whatever the circumstances was, I showed up and I did my commitment no matter what. And I agreed to do that. And he said that once a week we're going to meet and we're going to read this book and we're going to do step work. And we're going to do it at this time and on this day. And you're going to be there no matter what. And I agreed to do that. And then he said, what has proven to be the most important thing in my life, when this program deems you get your own house in order and ask for help, you do it no matter what. And I said yes to those things. I had no idea at the time, but I actually meant it. And, the miracle happened for me at step 5. It says in this book that when we get to step 5, the obsession to drink and use is going to go away. It says the alcoholic problem will be removed. And he explained to me that meant the obsession. And I looked at him and I was like, fuck you, Doug. Like, you don't know who you're talking to. Like, for 22 years, the only idea I've had was getting high. So I'm going to read some pages to you that I wrote down, and, like, that's going to go away. Like, nah. And, but, like, I discovered something else really cool that day. The 12 steps have absolutely no, like, care about what I think they're going to do. They don't give a shit about what I want out of them. They don't care about, like, my thoughts on them at all. They just work. If I do all of that stuff, it's just going to work every single time. And, right, so I did the 5th step, and I was freed from that obsession. And, from there, my life began. Like, that's not the period on this story. Like, that's where, like, life started for me. When I was free from that obsession and I was able to, like, not thinking about getting high every second of every day, not thinking about killing myself every second of every day, like, I began to be a human being. And, that's just been cool. And, like, nothing, like, a lot of things have changed, but nothing's really changed. Like, I show up no matter what to the meetings that I have commitments at. When others ask me to help them, I'm there no matter what. I work steps with my sponsors. Like, that stuff hasn't changed one bit. Those are the most important things in my life on a daily basis. And as long as I make those things the most important in my life, like, I get to live a life, and, like, it's been really cool, right, all the things that I thought I wanted, I far exceeded them. And, I get to get married in like 2 months. I've had a driver's license for a couple years consecutively, which I don't think I've ever had a driver's license for a couple months consecutively. My family's sitting here tonight for this, like, have a house that I pay rent at, I have a couple of dogs, like none of those things are like would ever have kept me sober or anything, but like the amazing part of this is like because of Heroin Anonymous and because of making this the most important thing in my life, like I get to like keep all those things and I get to learn what it's like to be a son, I get to learn what it's like to be a brother. I get to learn what it's like to actually be a boyfriend. And like I say these things, like I could be those, I thought I was those things before I got sober, but like that was just circumstance. I did nothing to earn any of those things, like I would say I'm your boyfriend, but I'm going to cheat on you every chance I get. I would say I'm your son, but I'm going to steal your pills every 8 seconds. I'm going to steal out of your purse. I'm not going to respect anything about you. Like I say that I'm accepting this job, but I'm going to show up when I want to, like that's how I live my life. And like, I've actually learned what those things mean today. It's amazing, like, I don't know, I guess I'll end with this. So 6 years ago, I pretty much, I threw a pretty big curveball at my family. They went to, it was like a Saturday night, like 4 o'clock, or Sunday morning at like 4 a.m., and they all get phone calls that Brian just OD'd and he's in the hospital. And they had to come together and like make sure I got to rehab and stuff like that. And then they had to like, my mom literally cried for 9 months whenever she heard my voice, whenever she heard somebody saying that like they had a son, like just, like I pretty much, I won't say completely destroyed their lives, but like they were pretty excited about what was going on, and, but they did it. They came together and they got me to where I needed to go. What this program has done for me by making Heroin Anonymous the most important thing in my life, I got to see what that looks like today and, what effect that has. And I got to see that like in living color about 10 days ago. My nephew spent the night before at my sister's house with police officers. He had to bring police officer to his mother's house because alcoholism had done what it done to her, and he called me the next morning. He was like, Brian, what do I do? And I got to be there and I got to like listen to him. I got to be there and like give him a plan of action we could take. And, he did the things that I suggested. And his mom said she was willing to go to rehab. And so I got to get on the phone. The same sister, her husband paid for me to get this $30,000 big book 6 years ago. And so I got to get on the phone and I got to get her into rehab. And I got to be there for her in that same capacity. And right, I think that's like what it's all about. And like tomorrow, my nephew's gonna come stay with me, and I get to be there to help him deal with it. As like, when I couldn't do that for my family, when I put him in that misery like 6 years ago. Like that's what this program gives to me. Like there's no price tag on that. There's no, It's just the ability to like walk around with my head held high and like be a human being. And it's pretty cool. I'm Brian, I'm a heroin addict. So I got a reading for the topic. Simple but not easy. Oh, it's from Bill's story on page 14 of the big book. Simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. I must turn in all things to the Father of light who presides over us all. These were revolutionary and drastic proposals, but the moment I fully accepted them, the effect was electric. There was a sense of victory, followed by such a peace and serenity I had never known. There was utter confidence. I felt lifted up, as though the great clean wind of a mountaintop blew through and through. God comes to most men gradually, but his impact on me was sudden and profound. I chose that because destruction of self, like a price had to be paid, simple but not easy. Like this isn't easy. Making heroin anonymous, the most important thing in my life, is not the easiest thing on a daily basis. It can get really hard. But if I say yes, what I have found is like what I have found when I say yes is like I get to get brought on this like crazy journey in other people's lives, and I get to see beautiful things, and like it's inconvenient and I'm tired a lot. But it is absolutely the most beautiful thing in my life. Thank you.